Welcome to the Unwritten Podcast. I am so excited that you've joined us. This is our first episode of many to come. I am your host, Guinevere Culpepper, and today I have a guest that is going to be sharing her journey through emotional and spiritual growth. Summer, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Gwen. It really is an honor to be here and be on your first podcast episode. I'm really looking forward to sharing, and I hope that my story can be a blessing to everyone that listens.
So, Summer, let's start from the background. Let's talk about what your parents do for work, how many siblings you have, where you were raised in the church or not. Just give us a little bit of background.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Pennsylvania. I grew up there and just recently moved to Tennessee. I have 6 siblings, so I'm one of 7. We have 4 boys and 3 girls. I'm the second girl. And then my father's a pastor, and he retired just a year or so ago, and my mom's a nurse. She's still working. And like I said, my dad is a pastor, so I was raised in the church.
So you're like a baby of the family, a little spoiled. Everyone else took care of your needs, maybe.
Not exactly.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about what family life was like then.
Okay, yeah. So something about my family is we're very independent.
Ooh.
I think my parents, definitely raised some independent children. They were working a lot. Like my dad had a church about an hour away from home, and my mom did a lot of 12-hour shifts. So my siblings and I, we basically, we had everything we needed. They took good care of us, but we did have to learn to take care of ourselves as well.
Sure. And so was it just like 4 of you at home, 3 of you at home? I know there's an age gap there. So through your childhood, what do you remember growing up with the most in the home?
Mostly the parts that I remember. My oldest brother was at college already, and then my second oldest, he was about to go out. So mostly it was about 5 of us there. And usually I hung out with my sisters because there was a pretty big age gap between me and my brothers. So a lot of times it was us 3, and then sometimes, my older sister would go over to her friends for a while, and it would just be Emily and I, my younger sister, at home, trying to figure out some things to do to keep busy. And then, sometimes my brothers would be home in the barn, just on the trampoline, and might have friends over, or we might go four-wheelering and things like that.
So you had a pretty exciting childhood, but for the most part, it was just you and your younger sister at home, and then your middle sister, Autumn, was home here and there if otherwise she was at friend's house. But your brothers, for the most part, they were moved out and whatever.
Yeah.
But they were in the area. They could come see them.
Yeah, and when I was old enough to, really begin growing and developing, they were mostly out of that house already.
So with all this chaos growing up in a family, what was your personality like in the home? Were you like extroverted and took charge and were like the boss of the family? Some little kids can be like that. Or were you more of just like the peacemaker or quiet and just to yourself?
Yeah, I think my personality changed as I grew. I definitely started off pretty sassy. Yeah, I've been told.
I can see that.
So in the beginning, I was more sassy and maybe a little rowdy at times. But I think as I got older, I turned into more of the peacemaker. Sometimes my brothers and my dad would get into different arguments or discussions and things like that, or my sisters and my parents may not have agreed on some things, and so I usually took the role of trying to keep the peace or have everyone be on the same page. So I didn't like the division. You don't like conflict? No, I definitely did not like conflict.
So you solved all the problems. You made sure that things were as peaceful as possible.
I tried, and even later with you and your family, you've told me that I'm like a lawyer sometimes.
Yes, very much
so. Yeah, I was kind of like that. I was also a caregiver. And I still am. That's part of my personality. I like to take care of people, make sure that they're okay. I'm always the mom friend. And like I said, with my little sister being at home, I always looked after her. And so that's a little bit of how I was. And then also, like I mentioned, a very independent family.
Right.
And because of that, I wasn't very personally close to my siblings or my parents as well. was someone that would keep a lot of things in and didn't really know how to express my emotions.
Right. So you didn't know how to express. You came from a crazy family. You're the peacemaker. Not crazy family, but
Yeah,
crazy
not
as far
crazy,
as like
but-
there were a lot of kids. There's a lot going on.
Yeah.
You're the peacemaker. And then emotionally and all that, you're not super close to necessarily one individual. So how did that affect you growing up?
I think that turned into kind of more like one-sided, not necessarily totally one-sided friendships, but I gave more than I received. I wasn't very comfortable sharing in friendships or, letting people in deeper than surface level. So I think sometimes, that made me a little bit lonely, and I often just dealt with things on my own and not really seeking help or comfort from other people.
So then you move, to high school. How did that affect you in high school? I mean, I'm sure that relationships in high school are difficult if you're not, you don't emotionally make yourself available to give some to your different friends. How was that?
Yeah, I was definitely an overachiever, I would say. Always trying to do my best, and so I kept very busy. So I think part of me I didn't really realize until later in high school. I didn't realize, there's an issue here. Like, I'm not really connecting with people well. And so I kind of pushed those things away and just focused on my classes, focused on extracurricular things. But there were times, because I wasn't a dorm student, that I could tell, there are people here and they have deep relationships because they spend time together, they're vulnerable with each other. And I don't have that. And so sometimes I would notice that, and I think I recognized like a longing in my heart for something like that, but I didn't know how to make that happen. I didn't feel like I had enough space or capacity in my life to do that at that point either. So it was an interesting experience.
So how did you go from that to then being able to make deeper connections with people? What was the, I guess, turning point, and how did you start the process of, okay, I need to emotionally be, because obviously from your childhood you had walls up of some sort. Your parents probably, because they work so much, weren't as home as often to help you process through what you're going through. Your siblings, your brothers were already out, and you had your sisters there, but they weren't, Autumn was in and out with her friends, and so it was just you and Emily. You didn't really have someone to process through your emotions with. Then you get to high school and you're like, I have lots of friends. I know a lot of people. I love to give. I love to help people, but emotionally there's this very big wall up. So how'd you go from that to now?
Yeah.
Maybe, we don't know, having lots of friends or having closer friendships.
Yeah, I would say it was definitely a journey. I think it started when you and your family came, because for background, your dad became the principal of that school.
Right.
So you moved and you came to Pennsylvania around my junior year of high school. So yeah, we became close friends, and then I think that was like the first time that I really started to give and receive in a friendship, because you really helped me with that. You were like, well, if I'm going to be receiving, I also want to be giving. And so I think I had more maturity at that time to be able to accept some of those things.
Yeah, I think when I met you, it was very interesting because it wasn't intentional at all, but there was like this certain coldness, but it wasn't cold. It was just this wall of like, there's nothing more. And it wasn't like you were aware or that you knew there was even more sometimes. It wasn't you intentionally like holding back or not wanting to go, but you were so used to just like something would happen and it would just go, away, and you wouldn't focus on it too much. Or if you were sad, it wasn't like you had ever really shared like what deeply was going on. And so when I met you, I remember thinking like,
what do I do?
Yeah, what am I doing wrong? Obviously that life isn't perfect. And I think that was hard, is because I don't think you knew 100% even what you were feeling or that there was a problem there. to even be able to communicate there's a need emotionally. I'm feeling, A, B, C, or D. I don't think you were aware of that. Am I right in that statement?
No, yeah, you're totally right. And I think at one point I thought that I was not bothered by things because I was able to, just push them down or push them back to process at a different time. And then I was like, okay, I feel better. I must have processed through it. It's all good. I move on. And then later I find out, okay, actually there's still something bothering me. But it wasn't until later down the road that I actually was able to pinpoint, okay, I'm feeling this because of this. And, we can move on from that.
Yeah, so it's like little roots being put into your situation of trying to figure out what you think and feel. Since you never felt those things or really thought about them, you still had these leftover roots to be kind of pulled out. And so that's going to pile up over time and then affect even more relationships like, romantic and things like that. But before we go on with the emotional, I want to go back to your spiritual journey of what that looked like spiritually, being raised in a home with a lot of children and your parents working a lot. How was that? How did your parents raise you spiritually, and was there any struggles with that?
Okay. Yeah, my parents, I think they were very strong spiritually, great examples in their spiritual walk. Being that my dad was a pastor, I was involved in church a lot, and even in high school or, in elementary school all throughout, I was involved in Pathfinders and different things like that. I was always more inclined to spiritual things than against them, I think, and that helped for sure. I think when I was younger, my spiritual walk wasn't really personal. So it was more like I was doing these things and I loved God as far as I could tell, and I believed, what our church believes, but it wasn't that there wasn't a personal connection. I wasn't able to be consistent with my devotions and spending time with God because I think that personal element was just missing.
So not only did you not have really close relationships with other people or your family, you didn't really have a super close relationship emotionally with God. And so what changed? What helped you grow? What helped you figure out your relationship with God emotionally too?
Okay, that's a great question. I think it begins back with my relationship with my parents. I love them. They're great parents and
very sweet people.
They are.
Yes.
They do their best for us, and they really worked hard so that we could have everything that we had.
Yeah.
I think because of how much they did work, though, like I said, it wasn't too much of an emotional connection.
Right.
And so as a father figure, I didn't connect that with God as much. So I didn't see God as like my heavenly father as much. And I realized that throughout my childhood, there was always a male mentor in my life that God had put there to, I think, start showing me who he was as a father. Right. And I think your dad played a big role in that. When I became close to your family, I was able to see of how your family was a strongly connected family, and how your parents related to you guys. And, I just saw the love that your parents showed to you.
Not that your parents didn't show love.
Definitely.
But it was definitely something was missing there for you, and that's not necessarily their intentionality or fault. It's just there's a lot of kids they're providing for both. Your dad's a pastor, which is a very demanding job. You have church offices, so you didn't really understand that father figure image. So then you go into high school and different of your teachers, you see how they interact with not only the students but with their family, and you realize like maybe there could be a God who's my father. Maybe there is something else to that. So continue taking us along. What really helped you see God as your father?
Yeah, I think realizing that hole or that longing and desire in my heart really was just God preparing me to meet him truly. He had to show me my need for me to really want him. You know, because why would I really want him if I don't understand the actual need that I have?
Right. You're not like, I don't even know
Right.
what this is. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think something that really helped, there was one night at Vespers that we watched a video. The person showed us about a father and his son. The father was a train master.
Right.
And his son was out playing one day, and his father was in charge of putting down this drawbridge before the train got there. So there was one time a train was coming, and he didn't notice it. But then the son saw it, and he was like trying to get his attention, so he was trying to go over quickly, but he ended up falling into the gears of where the train would go, or where the bridge would go down.
Right.
And then the father realized that the train was coming. He was looking around for his son. He saw him fall in.
Right.
But there wasn't enough time to get him and put the bridge down.
Right. So save one or the other.
Right. So he had to make that choice. Do I put the bridge down and crush my son in the gears, but save like
hundreds of people?
All the people on the train, or do I, let them all die and save my son? So he ended up deciding to save the people on the train. And that video was just so touching for me because I saw the people on the train go by, and the father was just out there just in tears, just agonizing pain that he just crushed his son, and all these people on the train have no clue about it. They're just, clueless, and it shows, someone doing drugs on the train, other people arguing, people just reading a book, and they're just so, carefree. They have no clue what just went on. And that video, I think, just broke my heart there. And it really touched me. And it was just God showing me that, you're one of those people on that train. And I have sacrificed so much for you that you don't realize. But it's because I love you so much that I did this. And so I think that was the missing piece for me. It really helped me understand that not only did Jesus love me and die for me, which I could see because he came down to earth and he literally died for me, but I understood that God also sacrificed. And he did that because he loved me. And so when I understood that, I understood that God is my heavenly Father, and because he loved me, he sacrificed his son. And after that point, I was able to be consistent with my devotions. And I think that was really the turning point for me spiritually.
Yeah, and I think that once you realize it's an individual, personal, that really hits you. And we just, I don't know, it's just like this tap into your emotions that you realized, whoa, I do actually feel that. Now I understand. And so then you understood the importance of your devotions, and you wanted that connection. Right. You wanted to understand. You wanted to not just be the person on the train, not even caring. You wanted to be consistent and have a relationship. And so also you like to journal and things like that. And I think that helped you as well, of just writing down what you were thinking, what you were feeling, and a prayer to God.
Right.
Yeah, that helped you kind of have that emotional connection with God. So now we have, your spiritual and we have your emotional. They both kind of are tying together with relationships on this earth and relationships to your Heavenly Father. And so we've started this journey spiritually, but still emotionally with people. We're still working on that. So what were the next steps emotionally that helped you?
Yeah, I think after I started growing more spiritually and I realized, God is my Heavenly Father and he loves me. I can find refuge in him. I can find safety, and I can be vulnerable with him. That was what I needed to be able to be vulnerable with other people.
Right.
So first, when I started feeling like those longings of, seeing the connection in other people that I didn't have, I would take that and turn to God with it. And I often sat in the chapel there at BMA, Blue Mountain Academy, and I just meditated on those verses that are on the wall. They have, be still and know that I'm God. And the other one is, I've called you by your name. You are mine.
Yes.
So I would just sit there and meditate on that and just be like, okay, God, I believe you. I belong to you. you love me, and you can fulfill me. And slowly after doing that, I made that foundation that I could, like, it was as if, like, no matter what happened to me here on earth with other people, it's okay because I could still be okay in God. Yeah. And I didn't have that before, where it's like, well, if those things happen, well, you know, it really affected me.
Yeah.
So then I was able to take more of the risks of being closer to people and letting them in more.
Yeah, so you didn't need to protect yourself as much because you found this, like you just said, refuge in God. And I feel like walls were just like shattered slowly, but then like I feel like they were broken slowly, and then there was a point where it just was kind of just shattered, and your walls of your relationship with God kind of went away, and you just dove headfirst in and kind of figured that out. And then in turn, your relationships with other people weren't as scary because you're figuring out what you were feeling to even know how to express them through journaling and seeking God, and then through mentorship and talking to people. And so now you get to college, which is totally different than high school.
Yes.
You feel like you're at a better place. You're doing so much better. You get to college. How did God continue to open your eyes to more and more healing?
Yeah, it started in my senior year, or after that in my junior year. From then, I just started a journey of getting to know myself. Because, like I said, I didn't really tap into my emotional side. Right. I was very... I don't know how you describe it.
Even kill, no emotions,
yeah,
no
it was
feelings.
very hard to get to my emotional side for other people even. Like, my sisters would try to ask me questions of, like, how'd you feel about that? Or, you know, growing up. Because they were on that journey as well of getting to know themselves and wanting to heal from different things. Yeah. And I just would shut it down, basically.
I'm sure that was irritating for both sides.
It was hard, yeah. It was frustrating for me because I didn't understand what I was feeling.
Right.
They're to be able to explain. And so it was just frustrating. But after that, in my senior year, I started trying to figure those things out. And I started to be more open to discussing. And I also saw the need to grow in my relationship with my family, especially. And so that was like a motivator for me as well. And when I got to college, I made some good friends there, and I found some mentors that I was able to speak with, and they really helped me through that. And I think with you and our friendship as well, you know, you were able to help me figure out that in conflict is actually opportunity to connect. And that's something I didn't understand before. I was always very like,
once we fix it, once you talk about it, let's be done with it and let's never talk about it again, and we're fine and I'm happy with you and it's no big deal. But basically. And you just sit there and just let everything happen, where I was more like, that's not working out what you're actually feeling. I know I upset you. I know I hurt you. So talk about that. Yeah. Share, or you know, and even you don't even have to share it with me. To tell someone what happened so that you can heal and figure out your emotions. And I think that was a big step once you figured out how to do that. And I think another thing that helped you is going into the spiritual program at the university you were at, that I feel like God really opened that door up for you to this whole new world of mentors and classes that just emotionally pushed you, spiritually pushed you, and helped you see your need and things that would help you. And so on a personal level, you could fix that yourself while having mentors, you know?
Yeah, that's right. I joined the SALT program at Southern Adventist University. Is Soul Winning and Leadership Program. Soul Winning and Leadership Training.
There you go.
I loved it. It was a great experience. And that's right. I met a lot of spiritual friends there and my mentors. And I also met my now husband there. And so,
So if you want to find a future husband, go to
that program. Go to college.
Go to that program for the right reasons, which was learning to witness for God. But a plus is for Summer that in that she found her now husband, which y'all are going to Africa soon. Which is totally off topic,
we
but
are.
I just thought
we can talk about that.
We can talk about that soon. Yeah. So you were in the SALT program. You met and started dating Dawson, but there was some issues that
Yes.
arose through that you didn't know you were still struggling with. So
Right.
let's talk about that. Well, before we go any further, Summer, our time is up for this episode. But please, viewers, don't go anywhere. Next week, we will have part 2 of Summer's journey through her emotional and spiritual journey. And this is a great place, I feel like, to stop, leave them on a little cliffhanger, and hopefully they'll come back next week. Thank you so much for joining us.